This is Don Rasmussen, managing partner here at Quartermaster Tax Management. I want to welcome you into a quick interview with Jason Molnar, who is our senior tax attorney when it comes to research and development tax credits. And Jason, thank you very much for being on today. We have a lot of questions that come in from chiropractors all over the country on why they qualify for research and development tax credits. So I want to pose that question to you. You've interviewed a lot of them. So you kind of give me some feedback on that, sir.
Sure, absolutely. So there are 4 requirements to be eligible for the R&D credit. The first of those requirements is maybe the trickiest, but it kind of sets up everything for the entire conversation. So the first thing we ask is, what are some examples of new techniques or improvements to existing techniques that you're providing in your practice year over year? And so we have chiropractors come back to us with examples of new modalities that they're introducing, new combinations of modalities, new ways of looking at interactions, using existing modalities with new indications from patients and new types of issues that they're seeing, maybe trying modalities with people who are older than they've worked with before, or people who have sports injuries or different types of injuries. And so there's just all kinds of different things that we see that they're trying every year. That we speak to them, and those are the kinds of things we're looking for. Those techniques is the statutory language we're looking for in their practice. Once we've identified that, everything seems to kind of fall in place. The second requirement is that we have to show that there was some uncertainty in the outcome of how somebody is going to react, or how somebody is going to handle, or how long it's going to take for someone to recover, how long it's going to take for that modality to be effective, how much pain they may feel, all kinds of factors that they could potentially be uncertain of. We need to show that that uncertainty existed. The third requirement is we have to show that they're doing some kind of reevaluation periodically to determine how effective that modality was, to determine how much their patient has improved over time. And fourth and finally, we have to show that they're applying the hard sciences in here. We're looking at medical or chiropractic science. And as long as we're focused on that, not some kind of business need or something like that, they've hit all 4 requirements.
Very nice. And so what we find working with chiropractors around the country is that it's not about their manufacturing anything. The reality is they are taking their time. So kind of talk a little bit about how we go in there and calculate this qualified research activity, which creates a qualified research expense. Kind of dive into that a little bit if you don't mind.
Sure. So we ask them to break down their year and their time and how they spend their weeks within that year. So how many hours do you work on average per week? And in that given week, or in that average week in a year, how many new patients are you seeing? How many reevaluations are you doing? How much time do you spend developing or reviewing patient files or developing patient plans? And what are all the other activities that you're doing with your time? And each one of those activities is going to be either qualified or not qualified. And we'll make that determination with them. But once we've done that, then we can extrapolate from an average week out to an average year and look at total patient numbers and be able to calculate a percentage of their time that is spent engaged in qualified activities.
So what I'm hearing you say, and of course I understand the background of it, so we're taking a percentage of their time.
Yeah.
And we are linking it to the wages of that person providing that modality or technique or whatever it may be. And that's how we come up with that qualified research expense, correct?
Got it. Yeah.
Okay. And then from there, we know that on a federal level, it's going to be a certain percentage. And then, of course, there are states around the country that also give an R&D credit, some very, very generously, and it's interesting. I'll talk about a few of those states in a second, but kind of talk through what that looks like, Jason, as far as how we calculate, particularly on the federal level, and then kind of go from there.
Sure. So there are 2 different calculation methods, but both of them require us to build out what's called a base. So the credit is an excess amount of research expense over a base period. And so a lot of chiropractors or people that I speak to, they ask me, hey, I'm only looking at 2022. Why are you asking me for information from 2021, 2020, 2019, et cetera? It's because we have to build out that base. And that's usually the first time we work with them. That's something that we need to do. Once that's done, then every year going forward, we've already got our base built out and we can continue to move forward. But that credit nets out usually in most cases to around 7 to 9 cents on the dollar at the federal level. Once you've overcome that base. So if it's even year after year, you spend $100 this year, $100 next year, $100 the year after that, you still get a credit. It doesn't have to be absolutely increasing, but you just can't be decreasing by too much or else you're not going to be able to get that 7 to 9 cents on the dollar.
Gotcha. So in thinking through the process, we have a lot of conversation with CPAs, you and I do, and talking to these chiropractor CPAs. One of the things we get a little pushback is that chiropractors don't qualify. So I'm going to let you talk about that, and then I'm going to come back and talk about a few other things to kind of wrap up this session for chiropractors. So,
sure. Well, when we hear from CPAs that don't believe chiropractors qualify, again, we have to go back to the 4-part test and ask that CPA, is your chiropractor, based on the information that we've gathered from them, are they doing the types of things that we're looking for that meet the 4-part test? Are they developing new techniques? Are they looking at new modalities? Are they evaluating patients? Are they facing uncertainties? Are they applying the hard sciences? In many cases they are, but not all. There are some chiropractors out there that, they use a particular method and they use that same method and that same adjustment year over year and patient after patient. And that's their practice and how it looks. And yeah, that happens too. But I'd say, somewhere in the neighborhood of anywhere from 50 to 70, maybe 80% of the chiropractors we talk to in a given month tend to meet those requirements for more or less.
I was amazed at some of these states like California, who does generally equal, if not greater, Utah, Indiana. And so there's about 30 states, if I'm not mistaken, that actually we can get funds from the state as well. And that ranges on the low end, about 10 cents on the, probably 10% of whatever the Fed gives, all the way up to 110%.
I mean, there's some states that give significantly more than what the Fed will give you. Although the states that give significantly more often have a few more hurdles for us to get through in order to get that credit. But yes, the states like California, Indiana will just about match what that federal number is. There are states where maybe they don't allow the chiropractic industry, but if you're a manufacturer, for example, in Louisiana or even Arkansas, you can apply for credits there. It's a longer process, but they can be anywhere from 2 to 3 times as large as the federal credit. So very, very lucrative.
Absolutely. So the last question I generally get, pretty much statistically, it's probably 90% of the questions is, the CPA says, it opens up you for a greater chance for an audit. Mm-hmm. Of course, I know the answer to this question, but I'd like to pose that to you. Does this increase the chances of them having an audit in today's environment?
Sure. So it does not increase the likelihood of an audit. I'll tell you, every time you send in a return, either an original return or an amended return, there's always the opportunity for the IRS to choose to review that. This does not increase that possibility, but every time you send in a return, there's always the possibility. So we can't say it's never going to happen. Right. However, January 10th, about a little over a year ago, the IRS came out with some new requirements for making a claim for refund on an amended return. Those requirements require us to submit a memo. We call it the 5 items memo. But there's a memorandum, usually anywhere from 2 to maybe as much as 10 pages long, that we submit along with the amended return. The IRS has an opportunity to review this and then either accept or reject the return based on the contents of the memorandum. That doesn't mean they can't go back and examine the claim at a later date. The whole purpose of this memorandum was to reduce the amount of examination activity the IRS is doing in the R&D space. So they get a chance to just review it and accept it or reject it up front. Assuming they accept it, which all of the ones we've submitted so far have been accepted, then everything goes through. You get your checks a few months later, and everybody's happy.
So in my conversations I have with chiropractors around the country, I always let them know that because it's now a pre-approval process, the chances have just been diminished significantly. Would you agree with that?
That is the goal of the IRS by creating this process, is they do want to have far less controversy in examination after the fact. They want to deal with that controversy up front through this 5 items memorandum approach and the 60-day period for them to review it. We are now a year into this process. We have not seen much examination activity out of the IRS in the R&D space. So maybe they are accomplishing that goal. Time will tell, but that was definitely a goal of the IRS.
Awesome. Thank you, Jason. I appreciate you taking the time out. And again, we look forward to helping more and more chiropractors around the country. And so I would encourage you that if you've not had your study done so far, or if you have friends, colleagues who have not had their study done, make sure that they go to quartermastertax.com, schedule on there, hit the button to schedule a time with one of our R&D specialists. They're just going to get some basic information, just making sure that you meet the minimum criteria. And then from there, we'll take them through the process. Generally, 30 to 45 days be the time frame, depending upon how quickly we're able to get all the documentation in. But again, thank you very much for tuning in, and look forward to working with you in the future.